So as far as I'm concerned, you're nothing but a false genius. But don't worry, I'll make sure to bury you.
Well, you are welcome to try.
This story begins on the day a normal-looking student, Ayanokoji Kei, commutes to his new high school, the Tokyo Metropolitan Advanced Nurturing High School. While on the bus, Ayanokoji watches a scene play out in front of him. A blonde-haired girl asks people on the bus to give up their space so an elderly woman can sit and rest during her trip. Most of the students there refuse to give up their seats. Luckily for the old woman, someone gives up their seat and the ride continues smoothly. Ayanokoji gets to his new school and walks towards his classroom. On his way there, a girl stops him and asks him why he was staring at her back on the bus. Ayanokoji calmly tells her he just happened to be looking her way and that it's nothing. The girl murmurs some other self-elevating nonsense and Ayanokoji waits for her to finish before getting to class. So the Tokyo Metropolitan High School is a prestigious school that boasts of having a 100% employment rate after graduation and is also said to admit only the best students in all of Japan. Ayanokoji joins the other freshmen as they listen to the president of the student council give them a welcoming speech. While the president delivers his speech, Ayanokoji finds out he's in the same class as this sassy lady from earlier. Even worse, they sit next to each other. After the orientation, students of Class 1D, Ayanokoji's class, all assemble in their class and wait for their homeroom teacher to show their faces. While they wait, the interim class representative asks everyone to introduce each other so they can be more flexible in choosing friends. While the others introduce themselves, Ayanokoji keeps wondering what he'll say to everybody. He's scared he might cringe his classmates out as there's nothing that interesting about him. When his time comes, Ayanokoji makes a half-assed introduction and tells his classmates about his boring lifestyle. The students still appreciate the effort and clap for him. At that moment, their homeroom teacher enters. She introduces herself as Chabashira-sei and hands out copies of the school's rule book to the students. She then moves on to explain the special rules of the school and tells them they will be confined to live in dorms with very little permission to go out of the school premises. Not to worry though, as the school has all the facilities any normal teenager would want, including a cinema for entertainment and a nice park for relaxation. Furthermore, Sei tells the students about the currency they would be spending at the school. Each student is assigned 100,000 points to spend every month to buy stuff only within the school premises. After class, Ayanokoji gets to the supermarket on campus to get some stuff he needs. There he runs into the sassy lady from earlier. He asks for her name and she tells him she's Horikita Suzune. He notices she was buying all the cheap stuff despite having lots of points at her disposal. He tries making a good conversation with her, but she just keeps pushing him away, telling him she doesn't need any friends. Just then, they hear someone screaming at the top of their lungs. They go check it out and find out Sudo, one of their classmates with anger issues, just got into a fight with some Class 1C students. Ayanokoji stops the fight and continues his day. A few days later, Ayanokoji's classmates begin forming groups. Ayanokoji realizes how much of a failure he is in making friends. He takes a walk in the corridor and finds Kushida, who asks to talk with him. Kushida asks Ayanokoji to tell her some information about Suzune, as she wants to be friends with her. The school continues for the rest of the day and C delivers their final lecture. After class, Suzune talks to Ayanokoji about the leniency Sei was displaying towards the students. Turns out the students were just lazing around, not minding whether Sei was there or not. Ayanokoji asks Suzune to accompany him to the cafe and she reluctantly accepts his plea. On getting there, they find a free table and set up camp there. Kushida leaves her seat and walks over to theirs to talk with Suzune. Suzune smells something fishy with Kushida getting closer. She gets up and leaves. Kushida begs her to be friends with her, but Suzune rejects her proposal and leaves. On their way back to the dorms, Ayanokoji finds Kushida's friends with students from other classes. They discuss the point system and how much they're given to spend each month. Eventually, Ayanokoji gets to his dorm in peace. That night, Ayanokoji thinks about how badly his classmates had spent their points. He also gives their nonchalance towards their classes a thought and calls it a day. The next day is the start of a new month. This means the students get new points right, wrong. Sei walks in majestically and has her revenge on the students for ignoring her classes. She tells them the school only dishes out points based on the homeroom teacher's assessment of the class. Sei tells her students she didn't rate them at all, so they aren't receiving any points for that month. The students of Class D take the devastating news pretty well, as many of them hit the swimming pool during leisures to cool off from the steam. Suzune joins Ayanokoji near the pool and they stare at the beautiful and busty Kushida, who's playing with some other girls in the pool. Suzune gets inquisitive and asks Ayanokoji about the S system, which is a system that ranks the classes A to D based on their performance and attitude towards their studies. Upon admission, each student is given 100 class points, which would dwindle every time they do something bad. By the end of the month, Class D, the most effective class in the freshman year, had 0 points to spare due to their nonchalant attitude. To get it back up, they would have to pass tests and exams and also prove to the school one way or the other that they deserve to be awarded class points. Ayanokoji reminds Suzu that she's one of them, the losers, and won't have to work with them if she plans on overtaking the rest of the classes. Suzu takes a look at Ayanokoji's hands and asks if he plays sports. Ayanokoji tells her no. Just then, Kushida gets out of the pool and asks Suzu to swim with her. Again, Suzu rejects her proposal and just continues her way. Soon, the class rep calls everyone together and tells them they have to work together if they plan on getting any more points. Suzu stands and watches from the other end of the pool in disgust. A few meters from her in a room, the president of the student council congratulates 2 Class A students for getting 940 points in their class. After the PE break, the students change back into their uniforms and head back to class. Suzu invites Ayanokoji, short for Ayanokoji, for lunch during their lunch break. By then, she buys him an expensive meal and tells him about her plans to create a study group for the dejected students of their class just so they can pass the upcoming tests and exams. Ayanokoji doesn't want to get mixed up in too much stuff, but Suzu tells him he has no choice. She gives him her contact information and leaves him to decide. Ayanokoji picks it up and asks some of the worst students in the class to join the study group. All say nay. That evening, Ayanokoji calls Kushida's dorm through the firm's internal line and speaks to her. Kushida picks up the call and asks what the problem is. Ayanokoji asks her to supervise study groups for Pseudo and some other underprivileged students in their class. Being the nice person she is, Kushida accepts the role and gives Ayanokoji her contact. After the call, Ayanokoji finds out Kushida already got the 3 dumbest students on board. He then calls Suzu to ask her if she would let Kushida teach the students. Suzu tells him she can't allow that. Kushida finds out and decides to do something about it. The next day, Ayanokoji, Suzu, and Kushida set up a small interview for the underprivileged students in her school. As expected, Suzu talks down on every student there, and this causes the others to leave without getting interviewed. After they leave, Suzu regrets asking Ayanokoji and Kushida for help. Kushida gets up to leave and promises to do something about the matter on the ground. Suzu gets very insulted and asks Kushida what her real mission was. Kushida leaves the place crying as Ayanokoji just sits there and observes what's happening. That night, Ayanokoji steps out of his dorm to get something. He finds Suzu and the president of the student council club talking. The president is her brother and was very ashamed of his sister for getting admitted into the most dejected class of the entire school. He holds Suzu up and goes in to punch her. Ayanokoji, who was watching the scene play out, steps in and saves Suzu from injury. The president attacks Ayanokoji for interrupting their discussion, but he dodges every hit. The president gets impressed and asks about Ayanokoji's background. Turns out Ayanokoji intentionally got a 50 in all entrance exams just so he could get admitted into Class D. The president leaves shortly. Ayanokoji and Suzu sit somewhere around the school to talk. Suzu asks him if he rigged his exam scores as her brother said. Ayanokoji tells her it's all just a coincidence and then talks about the students. School goes on normally the next day and the next. A few days after midterm, Sei announces the test results to the class and congratulates them on passing excellently. The whole class erupts in joy after finding out they passed their midterm test. Everyone has Kushida to thank for helping them study their hardest subjects and passing. 3 days before the test, Ayanokoji sees Pseudo fighting with the same Class C students again. This time, their boss, Ryuen, stops by to tease the guy with anger issues. Pseudo is held down and almost used as a plaything if not for Ichinos of Class B, who came at the right time to stop the fight. Ryuen and his goons are forced to leave Pseudo alone. Ayanokoji also joins in and tells Pseudo to keep his cool next time. Once the whole fight's settled, Ayanokoji asks Pseudo to join Kushida in their study session. Pseudo refuses to do so and gets to basketball practice instead. After practice that day, Suzu meets Pseudo outside the auditorium and gives him some summaries of their subjects in class. She tells him he has to study if he wants to keep playing basketball in school. Pseudo accepts it in good faith and gets home. The next day, Kushida meets Ayanokoji in the cafeteria to buy off some midterm past questions from a second-year student. They propose to trade off 10 points for the past questions and call it a deal. The dude tells them he wants 30, but Kushida and Ayanokoji negotiate the price to about 15. The dude accepts the new price and gets right down to business. After lunch, Ayanokoji and Kushida take a break outside. Kushida asks him if it was legal to have past questions. Ayanokoji tells her it's perfectly legal and is within the school rules for them to do so. Just then, the dude sends them the past questions they need. Ayanokoji cross-checks it with a one from 3 years ago and finds out they're the same question. Kushida immediately gets happier, but Ayanokoji tells her to tell everyone she was the one who got the past questions as he doesn't want to get into the spotlight just yet. A day before the test, Kushida hands out the past questions to her classmates and tells them to study hard before their tests. Everyone feels relieved and thanks her for her service. Fast forward to the present, Sei tells them although most of them passed, there was one person who couldn't get the pass mark. Sudo, the hot-headed basketball dude, got 39 instead of 40, the pass mark. Now he has to get expelled. Every one of his classmates tries to reason with Sei to get Sudo's expulsion revoked. However, she refuses to do such a thing and leaves the class. Ayanokoji follows her to the roof and talks about rules and virtues with her. Sei asks him to cut to the chase, so Ayanokoji asks her at a point to Sudo's score just so he can remain in the class with them. Sei laughs and tells him it's impossible to do such a thing. Ayanokoji asks how many points he would need to spend to get her to change her mind. Sei tells him 100,000 points. Ayanokoji doesn't have up to that amount of points, so he tries another way. Thankfully, Suzune joins them and offers to pay half of the price alongside Ayanokoji, just so they can buy the point for Sudo. Sei smiles as she knows she has no choice but to accept the deal. After class that evening, Ayanokoji thanks Suzune for helping him out earlier. Suzune tells him she only did such a thing for her benefit. Ayanokoji tells her not to pretend that he knows she intentionally got a lower score just so the dumb students in the class won't feel left out. Suzune punishes him for saying that out loud. A few hours later, the students all gather in Ayanokoji's room to celebrate Sudo's return to their school. The students ask Ayanokoji how he changed Sei's mind, but he tells them Suzune did all the work. After the party, Ayanokoji and Kushida remain to clean up before going to bed. Before leaving, Kushida asks Ayanokoji if he likes Suzune. Ayanokoji tells her she's nothing but his neighbor. Kushida thanks him and leaves. Before she walks far, Ayanokoji notices she forgot her phone behind. He follows her but doesn't find her in her room. He traces her movements and finds the innocent Kushida cussing at Suzune for being hard on her. Ayanokoji gets exposed and he shows his face. Kushida's face changes into a monster ready to eat anybody up. She asks him if he saw what she just did. Ayanokoji tells her he saw nothing. No, and he was lying. Kushida threatens him not to ever breathe a word of what he saw to anybody or else she'll accuse him of raping her and ending his career. Surprising turn of events, right? Ayanokoji promises not to say anything and Kushida returns to her innocent little self. On the next school day, Class 1B's teacher announces the update on their points to them. In the meantime, Ayanokoji joins Kushida and Suzune on the elevator down to their dorm as they get to class. Ayanokoji recalls the state he found Kushida in the previous night and is surprised to see her close to Suzune again. Suzune stops midway and walks out of the elevator, leaving a sad look on Kushida's face. Ichino's finds them and asks whether they already got their points. Clearly no, as Ayanokoji and Kushida express their surprise at her question. In class, Sei tells the students there's been an issue in the point dispensation program. Class 1D would have to wait for a while before getting their points known to them. Ichino's asked Ayanokoji to meet with her later on after class. He gets to a secluded place in the school and finds Ichino's already waiting for him. Ichino's cuts to the chase and asks Ayanokoji to pretend to be her boyfriend. She tells him she found a love letter in her locker and didn't want to hurt their feelings by telling them no. If Ayanokoji can be her boyfriend, even if it's for a week or so, then maybe the other person would get the memo and stop chasing her. Ayanokoji tells her he wants no part in the drama and that she should tell the person how she truly feels. Just then, Shikoro, the person who sent the letter, meets with Ichino's. Ayanokoji gives them some space to talk. Later on, Chihiro runs out crying her eyes out as if she was just rejected. Ichino's comes out with a smile on her face and thanks Ayanokoji for helping her out. Ayanokoji gets back to class after he meets with Ichino's and finds Sudo shouting out loud and telling his colleagues he was taunted into attacking some Class C students. Sei walks in a while later and informs the class that Class C filed a complaint against Sudo for fighting 3 of their students out of spite. Sudo tells her that he acted out of self-defense, but none of his colleagues believes him. Seeing as he has little control over his temper, it's not completely impossible to think he would do such a thing. That night, Ryuen, the boss of Class C, is seen enjoying his time in the school's bar. One of his goons walks in injured to report the incident with Sudo. Instead of consoling him, Ryuen has his bouncer beat him up more so he looks completely like the victim. The next day, Suzune asks for Ayanokoji's thoughts on whether or not he regrets not having Sudo expelled when they had the chance to. Ayanokoji tells her it won't do their class any good if they lose any one of their colleagues. Surpassing the class ranking system is a team effort, and they need all hands on deck. Just then, the class rep calls everyone together to help prove Sudo's innocence. Everyone, including Ayanokoji, agrees to help him out. Suzune refuses to give her answer and just walks away. Kushida meets up with Ayanokoji and sets up a meeting with Ayanokoji and 2 other students after school. That evening by the fountain, Ichinos also joins them and offers to help Ayanokoji and his colleagues out. Ayanokoji refuses her help as he suspects she may have a hidden agenda. Ichinos tells Ayanokoji to keep calm and she just wants to help them out. Later that day, everyone begins investigating the crime to find who's innocent. At one point, Ichinos receives an anonymous text explaining their next lead. She wants to pay the person some points, but she doesn't know how she could do it since the person is anonymous. Ayanokoji helps her out and finds out she had 2.6 million points as opposed to the 100,000 she's supposed to have. That evening, the students all meet at Ayanokoji's dorm room to table their findings. Suzune arrives shortly and joins them. She tells the group that she found out Sakura was the one who sent the anonymous text earlier. She was the only one who witnessed the fight happen. Just then, Sakura, who's in a dark room, receives a call from Kushida, but she refuses to pick it up. Suzune tells them not to worry too much about her since her testimony won't matter that much. Later that night, Kushida visits Ayanokoji to talk about the case. They take a walk around campus and Ayanokoji first engages her in a speech about crime and stuff. Kushida asks Ayanokoji if he truly knew all about Suzune or not. Ayanokoji tells her it's impossible to know everything about someone. Kushida is about to ask him something, but she stops halfway and leaves. The next day, Kushida meets with Sakura to ask her about the crime. Sakura hurriedly rushes away and apologizes for doing nothing. Turns out she doesn't want to get involved in the case as she fears it would expose her secret life. Ayanokoji watches Sakura run away from Kushida and wonders what she could be hiding from everyone. He gets an idea that she's probably a webcam girl, but he can't confirm his suspicions just yet. Later on, Sakura meets up with Ayanokoji and Kushida in the mall on campus to fix her camera, which broke when she hit Kushida earlier on. The creepy tech repair guy checks the camera and deems it worthy to be fixed as it's still in the warranty period. As he checks the camera, he gets very weird and creepy and asks Sakura for her phone number and contact details. Sakura, scared of the guy being a predator, is very reluctant to fill in her contact details. Ayanokoji fills in his information and tells the tech guy to contact him instead when the repair is done. Sakura thanks Ayanokoji for his help in the mall earlier in the day. As they relax under a shed, Kushida takes a bathroom break, leaving Sakura alone with Ayanokoji. Sakura asks Ayanokoji for some advice on whether she should testify or not. Ayanokoji tells her to do whatever she thinks is right. Sakura thinks hard about her decision. Ayanokoji butts in and tells her to testify for her sake and not for anybody. Kushida returns and asks Ayanokoji to meet with her later that night. When they meet by nightfall, Kushida exposes Sakura's hidden life. Ayanokoji's suspicion is right. Sakura is a webcam girl. The glasses she wears on her face are to conceal her true nature when she's in school. While they discuss, Sakura sends Kushida a text telling her she'll testify. The next day, Suzune accuses Ayanokoji of being too friendly with Kushida and ignoring her. Ayanokoji keeps his straight face and just gets down to the important details. By noon, select students of both classes 1D and C are summoned to the student council board to face trial with the president as the judge. Ayanokoji is there with Kushida, Suzune, and Sudo. The Class C representatives are also there with their own lawyers. After reading the details of the case, Sudo flares up and tells everyone Class C started the fight. When the time came for Suzune to speak up, Ayanokoji finds her spacing out for fear of her brother being in the same room with her. Ayanokoji snaps her back to reality and tells her to speak out for Sudo and the class's sake. When she's back to life, she interrogates the Class C students. She asks them incriminating questions and tells them it makes no sense for one guy to beat up 3 strong men without getting injured in the process. The boys refuse to confess, so Suzune asks Sakura, her witness, to give her testimony. Sakura steps in and tells the board all she saw that day in the gym. The Class C lawyer quickly quells her testimony, calling it hearsay. Sakura tells him she has proof of the event in a flash drive and shows it to them. The president collects the drive and plays it there. There, they find incriminating pictures of herself, but they keep scrolling until they find that one picture that had the boys holding and threatening Sudo. After seeing the picture, the lawyer steps down from punishment and asks for a suspension for both students. He asks for Suzune's opinion on the matter, and she refuses to settle for anything less than the truth. She then turns to her brother and asks for his judgment. The president finally speaks and tells him he's adjourned the meeting to 4 p.m. the next day. After the meeting, Sakura apologizes for her incompetence. Ayanokoji tells her to be proud she helped them out. Just then, the president walks outside and has a talk with Ayanokoji and Sakura. He asks them if they can really prove that the boys are innocent. Ayanokoji tells him he can and he will. Sakura gives a little information about her life. She's been a lonely, depressed young girl who's used to being the sad student of society. She used to think her secret job wouldn't come back to affect her until one night at school. One of her fans sent her an incriminating text. The next morning, Sakura finds photos of herself in her locker room. Elsewhere, Ayanokoji and Suzune talk about their next move. Ayanokoji wishes there were security cameras in the gym so they could just check the footage. They eventually come up with a brilliant idea they'll execute later on. In the meantime, Ayanokoji finds Sakura alone in class and thanks her for helping them exonerate Sudo. In return, Ayanokoji promises to protect her from harm. Sakura thanks him and proceeds to tell him some other stuff. However, Ayanokoji receives a text from Sakura informing him she's already sent the email. Ayanokoji has to leave and get down to the basketball court. So Suzune had sent the Class C boys a letter from Kushida's phone just so they wouldn't be able to ignore it. On getting there, they find Ayanokoji there. One of the boys gets up to leave the court, but Suzune blocks them and tells them to listen to what Ayanokoji has to say. Just as they're about to leave, she shows them the security cameras they installed moments earlier. Since the boys didn't know when they were installed, they were convinced that the entire fight was caught on tape. They start fidgeting and Ayanokoji calms them down. He makes sure to talk in a way that makes them get more scared. The boys are confused about what to do. If they press on and the school finds out they were lying, they'd be expelled for sure. The only way to go around this, which is what Ayanokoji and Suzune suggest, is to withdraw their complaints and act like the incident never happened. One of the dudes takes out his phone to call Ryuin, but Suzune tells him they don't get to do that. Eventually, they fold and withdraw the complaint. That evening, Sakura gets a stalker to follow her to an alleyway. Ayanokoji, on the other hand, meets with Ichinos to discuss his victory over the Class C goons. He receives an SOS call from Sakura and picks it up. Seconds into the call, the obsessed stalker catches up to her and pins her down. He threatens her to follow his every move or he'll post her secret life on the net for all to see. He then proceeds to open Sakura's shirt, but doesn't go very far as Ayanokoji arrives and takes a picture of him. Turns out the stalker was the tech repair guy who helped Sakura fix her camera earlier on. Now his life is ruined and Ayanokoji promises to make it hell-like for him. Soon, the police are there to arrest the man. Sakura tells the man that she never thought of him as her fan and should go to hell. After the incident, Ayanokoji shows Sakura how he found her and tells her to hold her head up high and be proud of who she is, Cambrel or not. Sakura blushes and gets up to her feet. In another part of the school, C meets up with Suzune and asks how they managed to get Class C to withdraw their complaint. Suzune gets sassy again and just keeps babbling nonsense. C just gives her one piece of advice: to find out all she can about Ayanokoji before it's too late. Ayanokoji has a secret skill or life that makes him stand out from everyone in the entire school. That evening, Ayanokoji runs into the president of the student council by chance. The president's so impressed by his actions on the case that he offers him a position as secretary. However, Ayanokoji refuses the position as he doesn't want any more drama. At that moment, Ryuin punishes the boys for withdrawing the complaint and asks them who threatened them. After giving out the names, Ryuin moves forward in the ring and meets with some students of Class A and promises to take them down alongside their other plans. Meanwhile, Ayanokoji meets with Suzune, who accuses him of manipulating to get false evidence so they could get the C dudes to drop their complaint. Ayanokoji just walks away, but Suzune stops him and asks who he truly is. Ayanokoji has a flashback to his former life, and it wasn't a good one. He looks Suzune in the eye and tells her never to pry into his life. Suzune is shocked. A few weeks later, the students finish their term's final examination and are now on their summer vacation. One morning, Suzune wakes up and freshens up to get ready for her day. A few days before that morning, a group of boys from Class D gather around the corner to discuss an important mission to alleviate their loneliness, Operation Peep in the girls' changing room. Fast forward to the present moment, Suzune packs up her swimsuit and heads toward the pool to join the others. On her way there, she finds the two new lovebirds, Harada, the class rep, and his new girlfriend, Kei, who ask her to join them in activities more often. Suzune tells them no thanks and joins the others at the bus stop. There she finds Kushida as lively as she could be and wonders why Kushida still talks with her despite her bitchy attitude towards her. Just then, the three jolly friends, Suno, Ike, and Yamauchi, join them at the bus stop and accompany them all to the pool. When they get there, the girls gather in their changing rooms to change into their swimsuits. They talk about how close Ayanokoji is getting to the girls around him. Kushida tries taunting Suzune into getting jealous of Ayanokoji, but it doesn't work. Elsewhere, one of the students reminds his fellow comrade on the radio to complete their operation and peep into the girls' changing room before the girls get back home. Sudo and Ike, who are on guard duty, try their best to keep people by the poolside and away from changing rooms until their operation is done. When Kushida gets suspicious, they quickly suggest they play volleyball to pass the time. The girls are reluctant to play, but they eventually get down to it and have fun. In the meantime, Yamauchi poses as a cleaner and sneaks into the changing room after placing a "Do Not Enter" sign in front of the door. Soon, the girls gather in front of the bathroom as they all wait for the cleaner to be done. Inside, Yamauchi struggles to install the camera in the ceiling. Kushida keeps asking after Yamachi and gets ready to get to the bathroom. Ike quickly signals to their fourth guy keeping watch to abort the mission while they still can. The fourth guy calls Yamachi and tells him he's out of time so he should abort. Minutes later, Yamachi rushes out of the bathroom and joins the others on the volleyball court. Just then, Ike pretends to have his stomach ache, so he rushes to the bathroom to continue Yamachi's job. Ryu and his goons pass by the bathroom and stop at the entrance after seeing the Do Not Disturb sign. Their fourth guy signals to Sudo to go assist Ike. Sudo races to the bathroom after receiving the signal. He gets to Ryuen and tries to stop him from entering the bathroom. Things start to get heated between the two, but Sakayanagi, the queen of Class A, steps in and quell all negative energy between the students. The president also steps back and makes sure nobody fights on his watch. Meanwhile, Ike gets cold feet and almost gives up on his quest. However, the fourth guy speaks some sense into his head and tells him not to abandon hope after all the hours they put into the mission. Ike regains his confidence and keeps on working. Sudo practically forbids anyone from entering the room. Ayanokoji, who intercepted one of the fourth guy's signals, asks Suzune to give everyone a speech about Class D getting to the top. She makes sure to pass the time while Ike finishes his stuff. She does so and delivers the speech perfectly. Ike manages to finish installing the camera and leaves the changing room. When she's done, she sneaks to the changing room and removes all the cameras set by the crew. Then she joins Ayanokoji by the pool. Ayanokoji decides to let her have fun by pushing her into the pool. Soon of the others join them in the pool and everyone has a very good time. That night, Suzune goes to sleep with a picture of herself and her friends in the pool enjoying themselves. Ayanokoji joins Sei, who is watching a school play about Ikaris and his father on a luxury cruise ship. Apparently, the school had sponsored a boat cruise for the students to further enjoy their summer vacation. Ayanokoji gets disgusted at the play and calls it a waste of taxpayers' money. Sei gets right down to the point and tells him a certain man came to the school earlier asking them to expel Ayanokoji. Since he hasn't done anything wrong, he should be fine. Turns out Sei had other thoughts in mind. Being his teacher, she has the power to expel him whether he's done anything bad or not. So she proposes a deal. Ayanokoji helps her class climb up the ranks to become the next Class A, and in return, she won't expel him. Ayanokoji loses control for the first time and tells Sei not to double-cross him. However, Sei tells him he doesn't have a choice but to accept the deal or risk getting expelled. Ayanokoji reluctantly agrees to help his class climb up the ranks to get to Class A. The next day, the students all come out of their rooms to check out the luxury boat and the sea. The cruise boat Esperanza has all the luxury items one can wish for. While the girls play around, Ike, who's with Ayanokoji, Yamachi, and Sudo, finally decides to ask Kushida out. He musters the courage and meets up with Kushida to ask her out. Unfortunately for him, he bricks up and ends up asking her another question instead. Sudo suddenly gets encouraged to ask Suzune out. He asks for a little info about Suzune from Ayanokoji and decides to get down to it. Later that afternoon, the four dudes get to have lunch in the standard restaurant setting. Sudo and his boys all get so confused at the menu that they start shouting for the waiter. One of the class is students insult Sudo and his boys. This naturally riles Sudo up and he reacts. The students begin murmuring about Sudo's lack of control over his temper and they're forced to leave. Elsewhere, two teachers who are getting massages discuss their class students. Ayanokoji retires early to his room to think about his discussion with Sei earlier on. Hirata knocks on his door and asks him to hang out with him. However, Ayanokoji refuses to go with him. Hirata then asks if he could help connect him with Suzune. Before Ayanokoji gives him an answer, Hirata receives a call from his girlfriend and leaves. In another part of the ship, Konji, the bashful, muscular, and narcissistic member of Class D, walks in the ship's corridor with nothing but pants on. The butler asks him to wipe his wet body, but Konji is focused on making a mess everywhere. A few hours later, Suzune meets with Ayanokoji to discuss the school's true intentions behind this luxury cruise vacation. While they discuss, Ryuen passes by and teases Suzune. His ex-girlfriend, Ibuki, walks by and confronts him over his recent attitude towards her. Ryuen becomes disrespectful and Ibuki raises her fists to punch him. However, Ryuen's bouncer, Albert, steps in and throws Ibuki away before leaving with his master. One of the school teachers receives a report from a student named Masumi. She thanks her for her help and tells her to await further instructions. Later that night, Sakura practices how she'll ask Ayanokoji out. Speaking of the devil, Ayanokoji appears behind her and tells her not to hesitate to ask him for help. Sakura holds his hands and smiles. Kushida joins them and Sakura runs away. Ayanokoji restrains himself from talking to her and excuses himself. Before he gets far, Kushida switches to her other, more serious self and asks Ayanokoji why he's refusing to speak with her. Ayanokoji ignores her and just lets her bore herself out. The next morning, the students are called on deck to witness the island they were approaching. Little did they know their summer vacation was about to end. Everyone gets out to sightsee the beautiful island in all its splendor. Soon, the students are called to assemble and await further instructions. When the time comes, Sei tells the students about the one-week special test the school hosted for first-year students. The students are shocked as they never expected that to happen. After dishing out instructions to the students, the teachers release them to begin their test. They leave them with 8 tents per class and are to share their basic provisions during the one-week period on the island. Also, each class is allocated a total of 300 special points. They're to use these points to purchase anything they want during the one-week period and can spend it all. However, special points that remain after 1 week would be converted into class points and allocated to the respective class. To earn extra points at the end of the test, each class would be given a chance to guess leaders of the other classes. If they get the answers right, they get an extra 50 points. If they get it wrong, they get 50 points subtracted from their remaining special points. Students of Class D come together to decide what to do. While some suggest they enjoy their lives and lavish their 300 points, Harada and some other serious-minded individuals suggest they all manage their special points so they can get more class points allocated to them after the test. A little bit of murmuring ensues amongst the classmates until someone brings up their choice of the toilet. The school gave them some portable toilets to answer nature's call. However, the girls feel squirmish over using such a toilet, especially when the hygiene is questionable. So they protest and tell the boys that they have to buy a toilet clean enough to help them avoid infections. After much arguing, Class D eventually begins their journey into the island's forest to search for a camping spot. On their way there, Ayanokoji and Suzune discuss their plans to take their class to the top ranking. This goes on and on until they all decide to take a break. Hirata finally breaks the silence on the toilet purchase issue. He decides to buy a good toilet for the girls so they can feel comfortable while working together. Following his decision, he asks for volunteers to help scout the forest for a good camping spot. A few students, alongside Ayanokoji volunteers and Harada, split them up into teams of 3. Konji goes with Ayanokoji and Sakura. Konji keeps jumping through the tree branches, leaving Ayanokoji and Sakura struggling to catch up. After running a few hundred meters, Ayanokoji and Sakura find a cave. Ayanokoji suddenly recalls Sei's words. If they're lucky enough to claim a marked spot on the island, he will be granted unspendable bonus points that will add up to their class points after the test. Also, another way to earn extra points would be to correctly guess the names of the leaders of other classes. Just then, Katsuragi, leader of Class A, and one of his other colleagues come out of the cave and discuss some of the things they noticed about the island. Ayanokoji holds Sakura's mouth and hides behind the bushes to avoid getting spotted. Katsuragi senses someone lurking behind the shrubs and goes to check it out. Lucky for Ayanokoji, he didn't find them. When he's gone, Ayanokoji releases Sakura and goes to check out the cave. There, he finds out that the cave was already claimed by Katsuragi. They get back to camp and find out Ike and Sudo already found a great camping spot with a river and fresh green grass as padding. The students are a bit reluctant about claiming the spot, but they eventually do so if they have no choice. They appoint Suzune as their leader and urge her to claim the spot for them. So Suzune gets the leader's keycard and claims that spot. Then everyone begins pulling out and laying their tents. Suzune refuses to do any hard work and just waits till the others are done before getting under her tent. That evening, one of his classmates comes to Ayanokoji asking for the best way to ask Sakura out. Soon, Ayanokoji, Sakura, and the other guy walk around the forest. They find Ibuki all battered up and thrown away from her class. Sakura and the other students of Class D offer her sanctuary at their camp, and she accepts it reluctantly. Later on, Ike makes a campfire and the girls return with some fresh fruits from the bushes. Everyone hails Ike for helping them with the fire and all settle down to eat their food. Ike apologizes to the girls for not supporting them earlier about their toilet issue. With things back to normal, Hitara gives everyone an explanation on how they can spend their points for the week and still have about 120 points by the end of the test. A few hours later, Kushida and other Class D students attend Ibuki. Moments later, the students discover Konji had gone back to the ship claiming he's sick. This is bad for the class as the teachers would penalize them for one narcissist's mistake. In a flashback to Ayanokoji's earlier years, little Koji is seen solving complex calculus equations alongside other kids almost as if they were in some sort of deranged experiment. One of the supervisors walks over to Ayanokoji and tells him to use the power he has at his disposal very well. Fast forward to the present, it's day 2 of the test, and some of the boys and girls just caught some fish and fresh fruit. Harada assigns tasks to every student and distributes the rations equally to each student. Later on, Ayanokoji and Suzune scout the forest of Dong Recon in case anything comes up. Suzune expresses her surprise at Ayanokoji, helping her out with her recon task. Ayanokoji tells her he has to protect her against Ryuen and his goons. Suzune nods in agreement. After walking a few more meters, the duo meets up with Ichinos, who leads them to Class B's camping site. Ayanokoji and Suzune appreciate their neat and orderly approach to doing things. Eventually, they leave and find a class a student guarding the entrance to a cave. Ayanokoji urges Suzune to challenge the student and enter the cave. Katsureji, who's inside the cave, hears the hubbub outside and checks it out. After hearing their plea, he allows them into the cave. Before they enter, he threatens to find them and cause trouble for them. Suzune and Ayanokoji would rather avoid trouble, so they move on from the spot. At their next stop, they find Class C's camping spot with Ryuin as their leader. They approach him and confront him for spending their special points lavishly and leaving nothing. Ryuin tells them not to interfere with his business and just face their own. Suzune then asks him why Ibuki's face was left bashed up and abandoned in the forest. Ryuin admits to beating her up. He then tells them he has nothing to lose since there are no points left. Suzune leaves with Ayanokoji shortly. On their way back, Ayanokoji tells her Ryuin's 0-point strategy is actually a good one as they get to enjoy life all through their time there. Early in the morning of day 3, a creep sneaks into one of Class D's tents and steals something from Kei's bag. A few hours later, everyone's fully up and ready for the day. By day 4, Ayanokoji and Sakura hike into the forest to explore their beauty. They get to the C-Class camping spot and find out every C-Class member is gone. They also meet Ichinos and some other Class B students investigating the same camping spot and join them. Ayanokoji asks Ichinos for some information about Katsureji. She tells him Katsureji is a pretty conservative guy as opposed to the queen of Class A, Sakayanaji, who's a reformist. Later that evening, Class D students sit and wonder why the Class C students would have quit the test. The best thing they could come up with is that they got tired of the test and left. Suno walks over to Ibuki to ask her questions about Class C. Ibuki becomes violent and insults Sudo for leaving their side. On day 5 of the test, the girls notice Kei's stolen underwear and accuse the boys of doing the crime. They call all the boys out and ask Hirata to find the culprit. Soon, the boy lines up with their bags in their hands to be searched. Before he gets to his turn, Ike decides to check his bag. Surprisingly, he finds the underwear there and is shocked. Seems like the person who stole the underwear that night had slipped it into his bag to incriminate him. With nothing left to do, Ike gives Ayanokoji the underwear and rushes forward to get his bag checked on time. Ayanokoji knows someone stuffed the underwear inside Ike's bag and wonders who it may be. Itara ends his search and finds nothing. The girls still don't believe him, so they ask for a pat-down. Hirata has no choice but to start all over again. Ayanokoji gets worried as he keeps the underwear in his pocket. Hirata searches through his pocket and feels something soft and mushy underneath. Hirata acts like the real G and refuses to give Ayanokoji up. Later that evening, Ayanokoji asks him why he didn't expose him earlier. Hirata tells him he knows Ayanokoji can't do something like that. He collects the underwear from him and takes the blame. Before leaving, he asks Ayanokoji to find the culprit so his sacrifice doesn't go in vain. Now that's some real homie energy. Later that day, the girls propose they all separate the girls' tent from the boys' tent just to avoid any further underwear theft in the future. They pick Hirata, the class rep, to help move their tents, but Suzune steps forward and tells them to add another trustworthy boy, Ayanokoji, to make sure Hirata doesn't sniff any undies while moving the tent. Talk about going overboard. Anyways, Ayanokoji and Hirata get down to work. While at it, one of the girls calls Hirata to come help them with something. Ayanokoji continues to work on his own and finishes the tent by evening time. Ibuki approaches as he finishes his work and talks to him about the issues she's concerned about. Seeing as everyone was suspicious of her being the culprit, she asks Ayanokoji what he thought of her. Surprisingly, Ayanokoji tells her he trusts her. Surprised, Ibuki thanks him and leaves. After his work, Ayanokoji walks back to the spot they found Ibuki some days back and rummages through the bushes underneath. He finds something suspicious and gets back to the camp. 2 hours later, Suzune joins Ayanokoji, who's alone by his campfire, to talk about Suzune and her hidden behaviors. Ayanokoji sees through all the small talk and tells her he knows she's ill and has been hiding it for a while now. He gets up from his seat and checks Suzune's temperature. Suzune tries to hide her illness, but her fidgeting body gives her right away. On day 5 of the special test, Ike, Ayanokoji, and Suzune get up early in the morning to gather some food. The others join them in their search for food. While at it, Ayanokoji silently asks Suzune how well she's been guarding the key card. Suzune tells him she has it on her at all times. Ayanokoji asks if she could bring out the card so he can see it. Suzune asks him if it's safe for him to see it, but Ayanokoji tells her to trust him. She shows it to him and places it back almost immediately. Just then, Yamachi comes by and places some mud on Suzune's head. Suzune gets annoyed and throws him in the water. If not for Ayanokoji who saved him, Yamachi may have died. Fast forward to a few hours, Suzune takes her bath in the river under the waterfall almost unclad. When she's done, she puts on her clothes and walks back to the camp. Ayanokoji notices Ibuki's absence and keeps observing the situation. Suzune asks to meet him somewhere private, so Ayanokoji follows her to a part of the woods. When they get there, Suzune breaks the bad news. Her keycard has been stolen. Ayanokoji keeps his cool and tells Suzune to keep this hidden until they find the culprit. Suzune suspects Kei, who she's having a falling out with, or Ibuki, the weird Class C student. Ayanokoji confirms Kei's innocence and talks about his plans to confront Ibuki. When they're done talking, Suzune asks for some time alone so she could sulk and resent herself. Minutes later, she smells some strong fire in the air and rushes over to the camp only to see that someone had started a fire and burned the manual. After the fire is put out, the class is thrown into panic as everyone begins blaming others. Ayanokoji stays away from the fight and just keeps observing. Kushida asks after Ibuki but can't find her anywhere. This could only mean she's escaping. Sudo, the hot-headed dude, puts two and two together. Ibuki was the spy. They all turn to Harada for directions on what to do next, but Harada is busy having a mini freakout. Ayanokoji brings him back to reality and he dishes out the tasks. Suzune chases after Ibuki and finds her walking away from the camp. She stops her and confronts her for stealing her keycard. Ibuki refuses to give up the keycard. She notices Suzune's shivering body and attacks her. Suzune uses all the strength in her body to avoid getting beaten up. Sadly, that wasn't enough against Ibuki, who pummels her to the ground and escapes. Ibuki presents Suzune's keycard to the person she works with and completes her mission. After knocking her out, Ibuki reaches into her bag, takes out a radio, and phones Katsuragi of Class A to inform him that she's completed her mission. Suzune wakes up hours later under a tree near Ayanokoji. She tells him about her experience with Ibuki and resents herself. Ayanokoji tells her to drop out of the test so she can treat herself. Suzune begins the waterworks as she blames herself for all that has happened. Ayanokoji asks her why she's so focused on getting to Class A. Suzune tells him she needs to earn her brother's approval and would stop at nothing to do such. That night, Ayanokoji carries Suzune to one of the teacher checkpoints. There, he asks Sei to help take care of Suzune, but she'll have to drop out. Ayanokoji is totally fine, so he drops her off with Sei. Everyone finds out about the stolen keycard and Suzune's illness. Ayanokoji tells Harada Ibuki was the one who stole the keycard. Now they need to do so many things in such little time, or else they would have themselves to blame. On the next and final day of the test, everyone packs up their stuff and leaves their camping site. Each class is given a note to write out who they think is the leader of the other classes. In the class decam, Ayanokoji writes the names of those he thinks are the leaders and submits them. Later on, the teachers assemble the students and officially end the special test. Just then, Ryuen appears from the bushes all dirty and covered in bruises. Apparently, he stayed on the island. Katsuragi thanks him for helping Class A get over 500 points. Back on day one of the special tests, Katsuragi had made a deal with Ryuen to work together and earn themselves some extra bonus points. Ryuen is to plant spies in the other classes and have them steal their leader's key cards so they can correctly guess the leaders of each class and earn that extra 50 points without having anything subtracted. He made sure to have his class exhaust all their points and forfeit the test altogether so that he could retreat into the bushes and wait for his spies to get him all the information he needed. Their plan works out just fine, and they all feel confident in themselves and their answers. On the final day of the test, Ryumen's teacher brings him a copy of the note and asks him to fill in the leaders of the classes. So the moment we've all been waiting for. The teacher announces the final points to be allocated to the classes. Coming in last place was Class C with 0 points, Class A comes next with 120 points, and Class B comes second with 140 points. Class D, however, leads the other classes with a hopping 225 points. Everybody's shocked at this revelation, and they wonder where they could have gone wrong. After their celebration, the students are called back to the ship. Suzu meets up with Ayanokoji to talk to him. On the other end, Hashimoto, one of Saki Energy's guys, confronts Katsuragi and gloats over his loss. Elsewhere, some students in Class B suggest switching classes to Ayanokoji's class. Ibuki apologizes to Ryumen for her failure. Ayanokoji exposes his entire plan to Suzune up until the end of the test. Ayanokoji had already figured out Ibuki was his spy, so he intentionally made Suzune show him his card, knowing that Ibuki would be looking, and made sure to set the stage to make Ibuki's theft of the card very easy. Everything played out according to his plan all along as Ibuki stole the card and reported it to the real leader. From observing the other classes well, he was able to find out each class's leaders in no time. Suzune is impressed and asks Ayanokoji why he suddenly helped them out. Just then, the students come over to Suzune to congratulate her for helping them win the test. Kushida finds Ayanokoji and tells him she hates Suzune. She then asks him who he would rather choose between her and Suzune. Ayanokoji chooses nobody and receives a text from Sei asking to meet her in the theater. On getting there, Sei commends Ayanokoji for his intelligence and planning. Ayanokoji asks for some proof about the man who came to ask for his expulsion. Sei tells him she knows everything about him and urges him to keep up the good work. Elsewhere, Ibuki finds out Ryuen would be awarded several thousand points every month. Seems like that's what he was really after. Suzune catches up to Ayanokoji and accuses him of giving her praise for his work. Ayanokoji tells her she's finally changing and would need allies moving on forward. Suzune blames it on him and grudgingly chooses Ayanokoji as her first ally and thanks him for all the help he's been rendering to her. In his mind, Ayanokoji knows he doesn't consider Suzune or any one of his colleagues as an ally at all. He sees them as tools he needs to win in a world where only winners are celebrated. After finding out the results of the isolated island's special test, the president of the student council wonders what Ayanokoji's next move will be. At that moment, Ayanokoji is seen reading a book on the yacht. He recalls the last discussion he had with Sei and wonders what his father or guardian meant when he says Ayanokoji would choose expulsion in due time. He lets his mind off too much thinking and joins the rest of his classmates on the deck. Life goes on normally for pretty much all students as they enjoy themselves. Kushida approaches Suzune only to get rejected by her again. Harada meets up with Ayanokoji and invites him to eat with himself and his girlfriend Kei. Ayanokoji rejects his proposal and tells him he'll rather avoid being on Kei's bad side. Speaking of the devil, Kei finds Harada and takes him away from Ayanokoji. Before the duo goes far, the announcer on the ship's PE system announces the commencement of the second special test. The students are to get to a particular room by 6 p.m. that evening. After the announcement, the school sends emails to each student, telling them the room they're supposed to visit by 6. Hours later, Ayanokoji gets to room 604, the room he's supposed to be in. There he meets Yukimura, a student they called the professor, and one other teacher. Everybody keeps quiet as they all await the last person. Soon, the last person, Kei, arrives and sees Ayanokoji. She gets really uncomfortable and sits down. The teacher starts by explaining the perks of the test. So every student from classes A to D will be split into 8 groups of 14 students named after each planet in our solar system. All 14 students will be from different classes. This is a problem for Ayanokoji and his team members as they don't trust the students from the other classes. Nonetheless, they have to work together to make sure Mars Group, their group, ends the test successfully. One of the students from each group would be chosen to be the VIP student, and the group has just 3 days to figure out who the person is. They're allowed to have discussions that will lead to them figuring out the VIP twice every day, and would rest on the 3rd day and finish the test on day 4. There are about 4 cases of how the entire test would play out. In each case, the VIP would be getting hefty amounts of private points. After reading out all the possible case scenarios, the teacher gives some final information and disperses them. That night, Ayanokoji takes some fresh air by the deck and thinks about the possible outcomes of this test. Ayanokoji suspects there is a traitor amongst them that will rat out their VIPs to the other classes. The next morning, the students get assigned to their various groups. Suzune is disappointed to find Ayanokoji isn't on her team. Nonetheless, she wishes him good luck on his team. Ryuen joins them later on with his bodyguard, Albert, and asks Suzune about how she got to outsmart him during the previous test. Of course, she refuses to divulge any information and just gloats over her own victory. Ryuen knows she's hiding something, so he annoys her a little, hoping to get some more information from her. Unfortunately, this doesn't work as Suzune only reacts a little. When Ryuen leaves, Suzune blames Ayanokoji for giving her all the credit for their success in the first special test. Later that day, all students in the Mars group assemble to have their first discussion for the day. Ichino's appoints herself as the moderator and tries to bring everyone together. There's a little bit of discussion here and there until the members of Class A decide to refrain from helping the team win. Apparently, they have nothing to lose as they'll still be Class A whether Mars wins or not. Hamaguchi, one of the members, tries to speak some sense to the class as students. The discussion about Class A's abstinence from discussion goes on for a longer period of time than expected. Eventually, the class of dudes separate themselves from the meeting and change seats. After the meeting, Ayanokoji gets to the lobby and finds 3 Class C girls picking on Kei. The girls ask her if she fought with her friend Rika earlier during the day. Kei tells her she doesn't remember hitting someone. The girls, who don't believe her, take out their phones to take her picture. Kei pushes their phone off their hands and forbids them from taking the picture. The girls begin to bully her into letting them take her picture. Maxia of Class A steps in and sends the bullies away. In the second discussion, the progress of the Mars group is still deadlocked as the Class A students refuse to help out. Ichino suggests they create a group chat where they can all chat together and enjoy one another. A few hours after the meeting, Kei is seen taking a shower. She suddenly stops bathing and sits in a corner of the bathroom sobbing. In the first scene, Harada meets with Komonji, the body workout freak, to discuss with him the goals of the special test and how he wishes to participate. As expected, Komonji refuses to do anything and just continues doing his muscle workout. Harada ignores him and joins Ayanokoji and one other person to discuss how to find the VIP. Harada tells his mates that someone had sent him the exact identity of the VIP of Class D. When asked who it was, Harada shows the duo that it's Kashiya. Just then, Komonji arrives and cancels the special test for the Jupiter group, leaving a look of shock on everyone's faces. That evening, Ayanokoji receives an email from Suzune challenging him for not trying to stop Komonji from quitting the test. He meets up with Suzune and calms her down. Ayanokoji asks for some information on Kei. He suspects that something's wrong with Kei and just can't seem to figure her out. Suzune tries to throw him off investigating Kei. However, Ayanokoji tells her that ever since the test started, Kei has been acting somewhat off her normal personality. Suzune gets where he's coming from and asks him what wishes to do about it. Ayanokoji refuses to give her any more information and just keeps his thoughts to himself. Ryuen interrupts their talk to frustrate Suzune again. This time he tells her that he's on track to identify who the VIP is and he'll stop at nothing to get what he wants. Ayanokoji reasons with his logic and is surprised at how smart Ryuen is. To figure out the VIP much faster, Ryuen seized the phones of all the Class C students so he could check their emails one by one. Sounds like this dude really does fear no man. Before leaving, he asks for a merge between Class D and Class C so they can reveal their VIPs, learn about this game's logic, and crush Class A. Suzune refuses to join his team and he leaves. Elsewhere, Kei barfs in front of her bathroom mirror. She reminds herself that she has to be a parasite or she won't be able to survive on her own. At that moment, Suzune sends Ayanokoji packing as she fears people may misjudge them to be a couple. Ayanokoji leaves her and finds Kushida alone stargazing. He joins her and talks with her. They talk lightly and Ayanokoji takes his leave. Before he gets far, Kushida rushes and tries to ask him out only to stop midway and leave for her room. In the bar section of the ship, the three teachers of classes B, C, and D all get together to take shots. Class B's teacher, Chi, teases Class C's teacher on his relationship status. Class D's teacher, Sei, however, asks Chi why she's always so curious and desperate to know more about her business. She hopes she's not trying to pay her back for the things Sei did to her ages ago. Chi tells her she's just interested in finding out more about Ayanokoji, who seems to spark her interest. On his way back to his room, Ayanokoji overhears Kei begging Harada to protect her from the bullies plaguing her on the ship. She wishes Harada could hurt them and make them stop hurting her. However, Harada refuses to harm anybody just for a girl. Besides, it's not like they're really dating or anything. He's just following her around just so he could be her bodyguard. Kei breaks up with him at that spot and leaves. Ayanokoji reveals himself and asks Harada whether or not his judgment is affected by Kei's toxicity. Harada tells him it all started from a rumor and Kei was just dating him for popularity points. Harada explains further that he still doesn't think Kei is her normal self as she's been acting weird lately, and he suspects it's because she's now being bullied again. The next day, Ayanokoji and Kei are the first people to arrive at the conference room for their discussion. Kei asks him if he was the VIP, and he says no. Ichinos and the others arrive shortly, and they begin the first meeting for the second day. Before the meeting starts, Kei goes over to thank Machida for saving her from the bullies earlier. The meeting begins, and the entire group is still in a deadlock as Class A refuses to discuss the VIP details with them. Ichinos keeps trying to bring up some new information about the VIP, but the entire team is still in a deadlock. The discussion continues on for hours with no progress made. By the end of the second discussion for the day, Machida leaves Kei to go do his thing. Kei also leaves, and the three girls from Class C follow her to a hidden place in the ship. Ayanokoji and one other student catch on to the bullies' plan and follow them to the same spot of the bullying. On getting there, they hide and spectate the three girls who bully Kei. Kei begs her bullies to let her go, but her pleas for mercy only seem to fuel them the more. They bully her harder and make fun of her. Kei gets to live the horrible experience again as the girls treat her mercilessly. The dude with Ayanokoji quickly steps out of hiding and chases the girls away. Instead of thanking the guy for helping her out, Kei tells him to leave her alone. After the incident, Ayanokoji goes back to his room. He finds out that the Venus group had concluded their test. This can only mean someone made a VIP accusation. He suspects Ryuen is behind their folding, so he has to act fast. He sends Kei an email pretending to be from Harada to meet him in the ship's engine room. Kei gets there and waits gladly to see her Harada-kun. Unfortunately for her, her worst foes are the ones she meets there. This time, they bring Rika, the supposed person Kei assaulted earlier, with them. They corner Kei and take out their phones to take photos of the terrified girl in front of them whose knees are shaking. One of the girls figures out Kei's been bullied before and makes it her mission to make Kei suffer more than she's ever done in her life. Kei tries to escape their grasp, but they pull her back and slap her on the cheeks. They ask Rika to come to slap Kei on the cheeks, so as to feel the satisfaction of bullying someone else. At first, Rika doesn't refuse to do so, but with much persuasion from her peers, Rika begins to enjoy slapping Kei. Her friends cheer her on as she slaps the living out of Kei, who just stands there and refuses to do anything. A few meters away from the girls, Ayanokoji spectates as the entire event goes on in front of him. He takes out his phone and records the whole thing, but still waits for the girls to get Kei to her lowest point so she'll be submissive enough to help with his plans. When they're done with the bullying, the girls leave Kei crying profusely on the floor. Ayanokoji comes out of his hiding place and meets with Kei. Kei tries to act like nothing happened, but Ayanokoji tells her to cut the act and that he knows everything. To make her even more submissive, he speaks demeaning words to her and threatens to expose her if she doesn't do anything he wants. Kei asks him what he wants, and Ayanokoji tells her to spread her legs. Kei reluctantly opens her legs and waits for the worst thing of her life to happen. Ayanokoji opens her shirt and finds scars all over her body. He feels sorry and tells her he'll protect her from now on provided she does something in return for him. He then shows her the recording of the entire fight and tells her to threaten the girls the next time they come to bully her. As for what she'll do, he tells her she'll have to step up and control the girls of Class D so they can get to Class A. Kei is shocked to the bone as she never once Ayanokoji would have any pound of balls in him. She gracefully accepts her new role as Ayanokoji's pawn and asks for her next assignment. Up next, Ayanokoji gets to say to buy something with his points. Very early the next day, Ayanokoji finds Ichinos sleeping peacefully in the conference room. Her alarm wakes her up shortly and Ichinos is back up in no time. She invites him to talk before the discussion and asks him about his dream to get into Class A. While they discuss, two other students arrive at the conference. When everyone's present, they settle down to begin the final discussion for the special test. Hamamuchi suggests they check each other's cell phones to find out who the VIP is. They would make sure not to expose the VIPs once they're found. Everyone raises their concern about there being a traitor amongst them. However, Hamabushi makes the group members promise that nobody would betray them. Even a little kid knows it's impossible for everyone to keep mute simply because the traitor gets a huge amount of private points if they get the correct name of the VIP on their first try. While everyone murmurs, Ayanokoji takes out his phone to join the challenge. Soon, everyone but Yukimura from Class D joins and shows each other their emails. Everyone sets their eyes on Yukimura and he finally exposes himself as the VIP. Ayanokoji just lies and waits for someone to betray them so they'll fall into his trap. So it turns out Ayanokoji had bought a SAM card exchanger from Sei and exchanged his own SAM card with that of the real VIP's SAM card. Then he exchanged his own phone with Yukimura's just to set a double-layered trap in case someone got smart and called Yukimura. Well, thank heavens he set a trap twice as one of the girls calls Yukimura's phone and finds out he'd exchanged it with Ayanokoji. Everyone begins to hate Class D members as the discussion is called to a close. Meanwhile, Ayanokoji and Ichinos remain calm as they know there's still a chance at victory. Ayanokoji returns to meet Kei and tells her their plan is still in motion. He recalls his plan with Kei, the real VIP from day one the night before, and tells Kei to play his game to the end. Later on, Ichinos joins Ayanokoji and Kei in the lobby to discuss their plans with them. They all receive an email that shocks them all. Turns out Ryuin had already guessed the correct VIP name of Suzu's group, Kushia. Class D members all meet at a bar to drink and figure out who their traitor was. Ryuin joins them and continues to gloat and frustrate Suzu's life, promising to crush the motivation out of her body. Kei, Harada, Suzune, and Ayanokoji meet up in the restaurant to discuss the possible logic systems behind the schools choosing the VIPs of each group. They figure out a very simple logic behind everything and discover that it's the exact same logic the school used in picking VIPs in each team. Ryuin had figured out the logic earlier on and had used it to his advantage. However, they do suspect someone helped him confirm his suspicions. Another thing Ryuin doesn't understand is that there would be those amongst his class that oppose his dictatorship style of ruling. All they need to do now is wait and let the traitors destroy Ryuin from within. Harada thanks Suzune for discussing this matter with them. After the second special test, all freshman students return to campus to begin the second term of their first year. During their first class, Sei tells them about the sports festival coming up in a few months' time. She tells the class to take the festival very seriously as it will have a major influence on their scores. Moving on, Sei tells her class they'll be paired alongside Class A to make up Team Red. Meanwhile, Class C is to be paired against Class B to make up Team White. One more thing, the entire team would consist of students from all the years as well. Everyone grumbles about getting paired with their enemies and having to work with them toward a common goal. While Pseudo gets pumped for the sports festival, the others are worried about how the events may turn out. Sei stops the noise and tells her students to read the materials given to them before deciding who to play for them. After reading through the materials, someone asks Sei if points from their wins would be added to their next written exams. Sei tells them if they manage to be amongst the top placers, that's exactly what will happen. However, if they place last, they'll lose points on their next written exams. Ayanokoji checks out the events and finds out they all have to participate in 13 sports events in just one day. Sei leaves the decision of choosing players in her hands and ends the class. Suzune jams Ayanokoji by the vending machine in the hallway and discusses her concerns about this sports festival. Ayanokoji tells her he knows the school has some ace up their sleeves about this test. If only he can figure out what it really is before they begin the test. Suzune asks him for any sneaky tricks they can use to put the odds in their favor. Ayanokoji tells her they may have to settle for fair and square for now until he figures out a plan. In their next class meeting, Pseudo suggests they leave all sporting activities to himself as he's the most athletic of them all. Everyone just agrees with Pseudo and leaves things in his hands. As they continue their discussion, Suzune gets up to present her own plan. She plans to combine people of weaker athletic qualities with higher ones so they can get more wins on their side. Someone opposes her point, but Suzune quickly hushes her up in a harsh way. The person sits down and Suzune stops talking. Just then, Kei raises up her hand and opposes Suzune, telling her about how haughty and mighty Suzune thinks she is. Suzune sees no flaw in her plan, which is actually a good one in the long run. However, Kei tells her she's not going to sit by and watch Suzune use the other students like that. She then asks for the opinions of the other students. Everyone seems to side with Kei, and Suzune gets labeled as a selfish and cruel person who just wants to use anybody in her disposition to get what she wants. Hirata stops the argument and asks everyone to vote for both sides. They'll go with whoever's ideas win the vote. The class votes and the majority falls in favor of Suzune's plan. Hirata ends the argument and continues discussing the activities of the sports festival. After their discussion, Kei finds Ayanokoji and asks him why he sent her the mail to oppose Suzune in class. Ayanokoji tells her not to ask too many questions or try to figure out his thought process so she doesn't get in trouble. However, he does tell her his every wish is to take Class D to Class A. Kei gets offended and confronts him for thinking he's better than everyone else. Ayanokoji tells her not to focus on the small things. Before he leaves, he tells Kei that Class D will produce a traitor amongst them that'll rat them out at the sports festival. He tells Kei to wait and find out how the person would reveal themselves. When it's time for the event player selection, all students change into their PE clothing and meet at the auditorium. There the boys test out their grip strength. Suda pulls a hopping 82 kilograms of force. However, Ayanokoji comfortably pulls an average score of 60 without breaking a sweat. After the trials, Pseudo gets chosen for all voluntary events. The others also get chosen, and they all hit the tracks. Suzune talks down to one of the girls there and Ayanokoji intervenes. Turns out one of the events in the tournament is the three-legged race. Ayanokoji humbles Suzune and teaches her a new way to work with her partner during the race. After teaching her a thing or two, Ayanokoji invites Suzune for some recon mission with him the following day to prove that Kushida is the traitor of Class D. Ayanokoji's suspects. She revealed herself as the VIP to Ryuen during the second special test on the cruise ship. Suzune questions Ayanokoji's accusations of Kushida being their class's traitor. However, Ayanokoji gives her reason to believe Kushida is exchanging her class's information for some private points. Ayanokoji tells Suzune to think about her next move very carefully if she wishes to lead the class in the near future. Suzune arranges a meeting between Kushida and Ayanokoji. At the meeting, Suzune outrightly asks Kushida if she was the one who leaked the VIP's information to Ryuen on the ship. Kushida acts surprised at the accusation, but Suzune tells she's not sure if she can trust her anymore. Kushida reassures Suzune that she's only working towards their success and nothing more. Suzune keeps quiet and stops talking. On D-Day, the announcer advises the students to pick their candidates for the 100-meter dash. Pseudo gets in front of his colleagues and begins encouraging them to bring home the win. In the meantime, Sake Energy meets with her other colleagues to ask them about the progress of their plan. Her colleague tells her Class D is falling just right into their trap. There shouldn't be anything to worry about as long as no one surpasses Pseudo's capacity. The tournament begins and Team Red takes the lead with 2011 points compared to Team White, who got 1891 points. The president of the student council competes in the 100-meter boys dash and wins. Suzune gets sullen at her brother's win. Komanji decides to sit the sports event out again. This annoys Pseudo, and he shouts at Komanji. Thankfully, Hirata was there to stop him from making another mess of himself. The next sports event, Topple the Pole, starts off with Team White against Team Red as usual. This time, the greater majority of Team White's people all rush to stop Pseudo from getting over to Team White's pole. Since Pseudo is the only problem they should be worried about, they all make sure to pin him to the ground. This gives Team White the upper hand and they topple Red's pole in due time. Ryuan makes sure to talk down on Pseudo and quell the spirits. The game ends in Team White's favor. Pseudo gets very annoyed with his teammates and blames them for his loss. Suzune does a little practice before her race and accidentally collides with one of Class C's students, Kinoshita. This causes a serious injury to the student and she's rushed to the clinic. Ayanokoji meets with Suzune and makes sure she's fit for the next activity. Suzune assures him she'll be fine despite her injury. On the next all-girls event, the girls on Team White tackle Suzune and secure an easy win for Team White. After the event, Suno approaches Suzune to offer some words of comfort to her. He promises to help her win the other events and make sure Team Red gets back in the lead. Unfortunately for Team Red, Suno falls into Ryuan's provocations and costs his team the win. After the event, Team White gets very close to Team Red in points. Kei meets with Ayanokoji and asks him how the other teams know who to target and who not to target. Ayanokoji tells Kei the traitor amongst them leaked their class list to Ryuan so it'll be easier for him to beat them. Kei asks Ayanokoji if he has any plans on how they can win the tournament. However, Ayanokoji tells her he doesn't plan to win the tournament. Instead, he wants this loss to fuel the class's desire to win more challenges in the near future. Someone from Ryuan's team walks over to Pseudo and riles him up more. The hot-tempered Pseudo raises a fist to punch him. However, Hirata gets in the way and receives the punch instead. Almost immediately, everyone loses their respect for Pseudo as their leader. Pseudo doesn't seem to care as he just ups and leaves. The school lets the students take a 50-minute break. Ayanokoji sees the look of despair on Suzune's face and tells her to talk Pseudo back into the team. Suzune is about to give up, but Ayanokoji speaks some sense into her head and tells her Pseudo is an indispensable weapon in her arsenal if she wishes to beat Ryuan in his own game, as he's the only one who can threaten their success in the tournament. During lunch, Kei and Hirata ask Ayanokoji to reveal the traitor in their class to them. However, Ayanokoji keeps quiet. At that moment, Kushida calls for Suzune and tells her Kinoshita, the lady she bumped into earlier, was suffering from terrible injuries. Suzune gets to the clinic and finds Ryuan there with Kinoshita. Ryuan makes Kinoshita lie about what really happened. With no other choice, Kinoshita made it seem like Suzune ran into her on purpose. Ryuan shows Suzune the terrible injury on Kinoshita's legs and threatens to take Suzune to court unless she strikes a deal with him. If she wishes to keep the matter private, Suzune is to give Ryuan 1,000,000 private points. Suzune turns down the offer, but soon asks Ryuan for another chance. This time, Ryuan tells her to grovel at his feet if she wishes to make things go away. Suzune leaves the clinic and meets her brother, the president, on the way. She tells her brother about her failures and assures him she'll make up for it one way or the other. Suzune decides to play the last trick in her book to put Class D on top. Suzune catches up to Pseudo as he takes the elevator up to the exit. She stops him and talks some sense into his head. At first, Pseudo tells her his sob story of how his parents were trashy people who never thought much of themselves. Basically, Pseudo is a child born out of wedlock and is already used to being talked down on by others. As a result, he's learned not to care too much about what people say about him. He keeps shouting at Suzune and complaining that his teammates keep slowing him down. Suzune tries to reason, but all her efforts towards making things work out are met with disdain from Pseudo. Just then, the announcer on the PA announces the commencement of the afternoon session. Pseudo gets back into the elevator to leave for his room. Suzune tells him she'll wait for him till he returns. Minutes before the afternoon session begins, Ayanokoji prepares for the three-legged race with Kushida. While they tie each other's feet together, Ayanokoji outrightly asks Kushida if she was the one who leaked their class information to Ryuan and his class. Kushida tries to act all nice and innocent, but Ayanokoji only keeps pressuring her until she admits to her son. Kushida tells Ayanokoji that she leaked the class list to Class C. However, she reminds Ayanokoji about her accusation in the beginning. Should he try to report her, she would push forward a false grape accusation against him. Ayanokoji tells her he has no intention of reporting her in the first place, so she shouldn't worry. He, however, asks Kushida what her motivation for betraying her class was. Was it for the points, or is there something much more than that? Kushida tells Ayanokoji she's betraying her class just so she makes sure Suzune gets expelled. Now that Ayanokoji knows all about her plans, she also plans to watch him get expelled as well. Now, if that isn't witch behavior, I don't know what is. Pseudo gets back to the auditorium and is surprised to see Suzune still there waiting for him. He ignores her and gets a drink from the vending machine before going on his way. Suzune, however, stops him and relates her life to his. She tells him about the gap between her perfect brother and her, not leaving how she's always wanted to meet up with him in every aspect of life. She's become so focused on reaching her brother that she lost the need to have friends. But now that she has seen the light, she knows she needs friends to achieve her goals. She pleads with Pseudo to help her get her class to Class A. Pseudo changes his mind and happily succumbs to her request. Pseudo gets back to the field with Suzune and apologizes for acting like a jerk earlier on. Class D is soon back to their normal selves. Suzune and one other dude decide to sit the afternoon session out as they sprain their ankles. Ayanokoji shows up and fills in for the guy. The afternoon session begins in a few minutes with a relay race. Ayanokoji is paired with the president of the student council to run the last lap of the race. Ayanokoji challenges the president to a race with him and tells him he isn't going to go easy on him. The president gets the baton first, but he waits for Ayanokoji to get his baton before he begins his race. When Ayanokoji gets it, he begins his race with the president. Together, the duo race past all the other runners all the way to the finish line. Still, Ayanokoji allows the president to win the race by an inch. After the entire sports session, Kei and the entire class commend Ayanokoji for the excellent race. Suzune approaches him and thanks him for exposing her to new levels of growth in her life. Suzune's conviction to take her class to the top becomes stronger. A few hours later, Suzune meets with Ryuen and Kushida to grovel at his feet to fulfill her part of the deal. Before doing that, however, she calls out Kushida for the traitor she is and asks her why she would want her expelled. Kushida tells her she needs to eliminate everyone who knows about her dark past. She then threatens to put Suzune's brother in trouble if she tries to report her in any way. Suzune sucks it up and gets down to business. Before she does so, Ryuen lets Suzune know that he was the one who crushed Kinoshida's leg to make the injury look very bad so as to bring Suzune to her knees. Just then, Suzune brings out her phone and tells Ryuen that she's been recording him all this while. If he tries anything out of the blue, she'll release the recording to the president's council. Unfortunately for her, Ryuen was also recording their conversation. He tells Suzune to grovel at his feet. Just as she's about to do so, Ryuen receives an email with a recording sent as an attachment. He listens to the recording and immediately shows it to her. Turns out Ayanokoji had pre-recorded Ryuen's discussion with Kinoshita when he asked her to crush Suzune to the ground. Ryuen immediately stops the harassment and calls it a day. Suzune gets to keep her dignity. A few days later, the president of the Students' Council, Horikita Mutaba, gives his farewell speech as he finally steps down from being the president council for the school. The new president steps on stage and tells the students about his plans for the students in the school. He plans to make the entire school into a meritocracy and ensure only students with the skills remain at the top of the class. After the speech, Katsureji meets up with Ayanokoji to warn him about Ryuen. He regrets ever dealing with the snake and wouldn't want the new star in the school to get backstabbed by the ruthless Ryuen. Ayanokoji thanks him for the concern and keeps walking. Sakura catches up to him and asks him to meet her somewhere private. On getting there, she asks Ayanokoji if he's already seeing someone. Ayanokoji tells her he's single at the moment. Sakura smiles and collects his number before running away shyly. Kei spectates the entire meeting from the shadows. In their next class, Sei reveals the results of their midterm tests. Quite a number of students pass and get commended by Sei. Following her praise, Sei tells them about the next special exam, the paper shuffle. This time, the entire class are to be paired in teams of 2 after their next minute test to embark on a challenge to get bonus points for their total score. This time, it won't affect their overall score. However, Sei tells them their next mini test questions are going to be set by other classes. She then explains a little further and tells them she'll send an email in a few days explaining the rules on how to craft the test questions for the other different classes. After the class, Suzune asks Ayanokoji to join her for a strategy meeting, which is holding in a few minutes' time. When she leaves, Ayanokoji receives a series of emails from Kei, asking him about his relationship with Sakura. Ayanokoji catches on to the fact that she may be jealous and calls her out for it. Kei is about to type her response when Harada calls her for the strategy meeting. Kei joins Harada and the others by the stairway. Kushida joins them shortly, and this makes things very difficult for Suzune. She quickly excuses herself and adjourns the meeting. When everyone's gone, she takes Ayanokoji to an empty classroom to tell him about Kushida's past. Apparently, Kushida is the lead suspect in an incident that happened within her class back in middle school. Although the story really isn't clear enough, it's not too far-fetched that Kushida would be involved in something that bizarre. Ayanokoji tells Suzune that they have to nip this Kushida problem in the bud, meaning they have to get her expelled. However, Suzune tells him she wants to try the diplomatic way of settling things before getting violent with her. Ayanokoji agrees with her wish and retracts his steps. Suzune thanks him for respecting her wish and gets back to her dorm. That evening, Ryuen calls his class together and holds a meeting with them to fish out the traitor amongst them. He walks over to Manabe, the ringleader of Kei's bully team, and questions her. Manabe folds and apologizes for her wrongdoing. Ryuen tells her it's okay as long as she exposes the mastermind pulling the strings behind Class D. Ryuen narrows down the mastermind to either Yukimura or Ayanokoji. Ibuki, who's near him, tells him the mastermind can't possibly be the weakling they know as Ayanokoji, the perfect background character, but Ryuin remains unsure of the true mastermind. He takes out his phone and places a call to Kushida to get her thoughts on the matter. Later that day, Ayanokoji and Suzune join the others at a cafe to discuss their strategy for the paper shuffle. Suzune proposes they pair the lowest-ranking students with the highest-ranking student to increase their chances of getting good scores. Everyone reasons with this strategy, so they all agree to Suzune's plan. They also guess out the class, setting their questions to be Class C. That night, Ayanokoji receives a call from Kei. After picking it up, Kei continues her investigation into Ayanokoji and Sakura's relationship. Ayanokoji tells her not to worry about Sakura as he doesn't plan on going out with her. Before they end the call, Ayanokoji tells Kei to make sure she calls him first if anyone ever comes near her to harm her. Kei blushes and ends the call. The day after the mini-test, Sei announces the results and Ayanokoji finds out he's paired with Sakura for the paper shuffle test. Kei is not happy. After getting paired up, Heron organizes a meeting to discuss how they'll go about the paper shuffle test. Kushida spaces out and recalls horrendous details about her past. She snaps back to reality a few minutes later and listens to Harada's plan. She makes sure to include herself in the groups just so she can betray her class once again. Suzune and Ayanokoji keep their eyes peeled for any tricks she may want to try again. As expected, Kushida gets up and leaves the class in a suspicious manner. While Harada and Suzune discuss, two students approach them to talk about their bad pairing. Both of them are bad at the same things, so pairing them up for the paper shuffle would only make things worse. Yukumura steps and offers to help the students overcome their boundaries and help them learn new things. Suzune allows him to do so, but she also assigns Ayanokoji to watch over Yukumura and the students to make sure they're really learning. Ayanokoji accompanies the three of them during their next meeting and finds out Yukumura is actually good at identifying problems and teaching people new stuff. Yukumura starts by giving the students a brief assessment test to figure out their level of understanding. After the test, he's shocked to find out they actually think the exact same way. Teaching them would be easy. While they do their thing, Ayanokoji remembers that his birthday is near. They complete their discussion about the paper shuffling test and continue their day. On their way to their dorms, Ayanokoji tells Suzune to prepare tricky questions for the paper shuffling test. Suzune tells she's working with Harada to set good questions for the opposing class. About Kushida, Suzune tells him she has a plan to take care of her. Before leaving him, Suzune asks Ayanokoji to drop her study group one of these days. Ayanokoji agrees to her and continues walking. Before going far, he receives a text from Ryuin asking him about his true identity. In the next scene, Ayanokoji is seen with Sakura in the library on their next study group meeting. Suzune and the others join them and they begin their study session. The past Kushida also joins them from beginning to finish. Once the study session is over, everyone but Suzune and Ayanokoji leaves. Suzune talks about her beef with Kushida again and promises to meet her after school to discuss things with her. Up next, Suzune meets up with Kushida and asks her why she really wants her gone. Kushida tells her she wants to get rid of everybody who knew about her past and was in that school with her. Suzune tells her to make a bet with her. If Kushida scores higher than Suzune in the upcoming finals, Suzune leaves the school. Otherwise, Kushida would have to stop sabotaging Suzune's plans. Kushida talks out the terms and conditions for such and eventually accepts it after seeing that everything's tailored to her advantage. Suzune brings in her brother to stand witness of the bet and make sure nobody goes back on their word. By nightfall, Kushida meets with Ayanokoji and Suzune to inform him of another condition. If she gets a higher score than Suzune in math, Ayanokoji also drops out of the school. Ayanokoji accepts the condition and states his own. If he's to adhere to Kushida's condition, then she'll have to tell him about the things she did in middle school. Kushida changes her countenance and begins her story. So it seems Kushida is someone who's always been showered with praises ever since she was born. She became addicted to being the center of attraction so much that she thought the same would happen in middle school. To nobody's surprise, she finds out she's not so special and gets annoyed. One day, she realizes that she can earn people validation if she gets to do all their hard work for them. This pays off for a little while until Kushida gets tired of doing people's dirty work for them. At night after school, she'll take out her frustration by writing horrible things about her middle school classmates on her blog and post it for all to see. One day, the students found out about her blog and began bullying her for being a loser. Kushida retaliates by revealing the secrets of every classmate in her class. This causes a huge fight between everyone in the class. All Kushida did was say a few things and stand back to watch her colleagues beat themselves to a pulp, both boys and girls. She tells Suzune and Ayanokoji that she does know a few things about the current Class D and can end them in a heartbeat. Suzune is shocked at the extent the attention seeker would go just to get what she solely craves. The next day after accepting Suzune's bet, Kushida meets with Ryuin to ask him for the questions his class wrote for Class D. This way, she'll be guaranteed a win for sure. Ryuen asks her what he'll get in return. Kushida tells him she'll make sure to leak Class D's questions to him so he can pass the paper shuffle easily. Before leaving, she asks him about the progress on finding the mastermind. Ryuen tells he's got the situation under control. On their next study meeting, Yukimura sets some mock questions for Miyaki and Haseby, the two students he's tutoring. After complaining a bit about the question's complexity, Haseby stands up to get a refill. Someone puts their leg in the way and causes her to drop her cup. Ryuen steps on the cup and faces Ayanokoji. He brings Hayori, one of his classmates, to come check out Ayanokoji and maybe figure out if she remembers his face. Unfortunately, she doesn't remember. Ryuen takes his leave almost immediately. After their study break, everyone takes an ice cream and popsicle break. Ayanokoji keeps quiet and listens to the others yap about ice cream and their normal lives. He looks straight ahead of him and sees a lady eavesdropping on their conversation. Haseby tries to strengthen the bond in their group and asks to call the boys by their first name. Yukimura tells them to call him Kisi, his father's name from then on. Everyone agrees and they all go in for a shake. However, Sakura comes out of her hiding place and asks to join Ayanokoji's group. After much contemplation between the members, they all welcome her to join their study group. A few hours later, Ayanokoji tells Kei on a call that he's going to the movies with his group members the next day. He tells her about her role in the next day and hangs up the call immediately. After the call, Ayanokoji receives an email wishing him a happy birthday. The sender appears to be Kei as well. On the very next day, Suzune gets everyone in her study group together to discuss the test results. Kushida wishes everyone a smooth paper shuffle and keeps smiling. Kei gets angry and confronts her. She tells Kushida how uncomfortable she feels, always smiling and acting nice all the time when deep down she's probably shaming her. Things get out of hand and Kei spills her drink on Kushida's chest. Hirata steps in and stops Kei from doing any more harm. Ayanokoji sits nearby and observes the entire scenery playing out in front of him. Once their study break is over, Kushida meets with Sei and hands over her own question papers. Before leaving, she tells her not to use any other question papers any student may present her in the future. Sei nods in agreement and collects Kushida's question papers. Up next, Kushida takes the question papers from Class D to Ryu and gets their own questions in return. The day of the paper shuffle test finally comes and everyone settles in class very early in the morning to write the test. When the hour is upon them, everyone keeps quiet and reads their question papers before starting the test. Kushida gets the shock of her life when she finds out the questions in front of her don't tally with the ones Ryuen gave her. She opens her eyes out wide as she realizes she's lost. After the test, Kushida gets up seething with rage and rushes to meet Ryuen. When asked for an explanation, Ryuen tells her she played right into Suzune's trap. Apparently, Suzune initially went forward to Sei, their homeroom teacher, to tender their test question papers. Before leaving, she told Sei to pretend to accept any other question papers somebody like Kushida could have brought and rip it to shreds once she's gone. Sei did that when Kushida came to give her the question papers. Suzune had given Ryuen the real test questions and had asked him to deceive Kushida till the very end. Ryuen walks near Kushida and finds the cheat sheet Kei had planted in her blazer earlier on. He then leaves Kushida to wallow in her own failure to get back to his class. The next time Suzune and Kushida meet, Suzune proposes they both bury the hatchet and move on. However, Kushida refuses to do so and tells she'll just shift her sights to the next person on the list, Ayanokoji. Big mistake, girl. Very big mistake. Ryuen sends the mastermind a picture of Kei and threatens to harm her if the mastermind doesn't reveal himself to him in due time. The mastermind, Ayanokoji, dares him to challenge him and see what will come upon him. The results of the paper shuffle exam come out in a few days. Hirata and the other Class D students meet up in an outdoor cafe. Firstly, they express their joy at the fact that nobody's getting expelled from their class before moving forward to discuss their next move in achieving their goal. Just then, they find Ichinos from Class B moving and chatting with Sakayanaji, the queen of Class A. They discuss a little bit about Ichios' prowess and conclude that it'll be better to keep her at arm's length. Hasebi talks about Christmas and Sakura asks Ayanokoji out on a Christmas date with her. Ayanokoji refuses to answer her and just keeps thinking of his next move. He looks back as though he saw a certain eavesdropping and wonders if the person watching him this time is Kei. Later on, while Kei walks back to her dorm, she finds someone following her and gets more careful. That night, she reports the incident to Ayanokoji, telling him she suspects the person to be from C class. Ayanokoji assures her that he's looking out for him and asks her for the thing he asked her to do. Kei tells she did a little stalking and found someone from class is stalking one of their study sessions. Ayanokoji ends the call and wonders what Sakayanaji has planned. The next day at school, Sudo complains about the Class C students always trying to rile him up. Ayanokoji commends Suzune for putting Sudo on a leash. Sujun tells him it's nothing and keeps wondering why the classy people are trying to raise them up. Sujun asks Ayanokoji if he has a plan to take Ryuin down. As usual, Ayanokoji keeps her out of his plans and reassures her that he's still interested in taking his class higher. Just then, Sujun takes out a book that's due to be returned to the library and asks Ayanokoji to return it for her. Ayanokoji gets to the library and finds Hayori trying to reach a book. He helps her get the book and the do talk about books. Hayori recommends some books to read, but Ayanokoji questions her intentions. Who knows? She could be another spy planted by Ryuin to investigate him. Hayori tells him she takes no interest in such a thing and leaves. At that moment, Se finds Ayanokoji in the library and takes him to an office. There, he meets someone he wished to never see again, that is, the doctor who trained him back when he was younger. A little insight is given into Ayanokoji's story. So Ayanokoji is a part of a very dark experiment conducted by the man in front of him. The experiment involved gathering a bunch of orphans and allowing them undergo ruthless mental and physical exercises just so they can turn out to be mindless psychopaths with extraordinary mental and physical capabilities. So far, Ayanokoji is the best specimen the doctor has produced so far, so he's there to have him back. He even uses a sad story of one of their employees' demise to try to get Ayanokoji to drop out willingly. Thankfully, Ayanokoji refuses to drop out of the school, but when the doctor gets insistent, the chairman of the school, Sakayaneji's father, stops by and backs Ayanokoji up. The doctor accepts defeat and leaves. Ayanokoji also takes his leave and has a word with Sei outside the office. Now that he knows Sei's threats of having him expelled was nothing but a farce, he's free to do whatever he wants to do. He tells her never to contact him about getting her class to Class A ever again. Later that night, Ayanokoji calls Kei to talk things out and apologize for neglecting her all this while. Kei accepts his apology and asks him something that has been bugging her. She asks him why he never for once showed his smartness to the class. If he did, he would have been a celebrity and all. Ayanokoji tells her he prefers being the background character and would leave it at that. He finishes his apology and tells her he's no longer interested in getting their class to Class A. He'll leave that in Susan's hands and step down. Before hanging up, Ayanokoji tells her that that'll be their last call since there's nothing keeping their relationship anymore. Kei tries to talk sense into him, but that doesn't work out as Ayanokoji hangs up the phone. The next day, Ayanokoji ignores Kei and tells her to be very careful about the Class C students. A few hours into their school day, Ryuin visits Class D to fish out the mastermind himself. He spots Komonji leaving the class and tells his goons to follow him. Sujun and the others sense Ryuin's onto something and may try to harm Komonji in the yard. They quickly rush towards the scene to stop things from getting out of hand. Ryuin tries to talk down Komonji, but the proud man keeps countering his sassy remarks. After the short exchange of words, Ryuin ends up getting annoyed as Komonji pays him back in his own medicine. At one point, Sakayaneji and her people also join the scene to witness what will happen. Ryuin keeps asking Kyanji incriminating questions, hoping for him to slip up and admit to being the mastermind pulling Class D's strings. Unfortunately for him, Komonji lets him know in the harshest way possible that he isn't the mastermind. Ryuin threatens to become violent if he keeps on spouting insultive remarks at him. However, Komonji tells him to bring it on and face him square and fair. However, Ryuin knows he can't do such a thing out in the open and in front of everyone. He retreats for a while and lets Komonji go. Sakayaneji teases Ryuin a little bit and hits a nerve. Ryuin reacts to this and sends a spinning kick towards Sakayaneji's head. Thankfully, one of her bodyguards is there to save her from any harm. So the little misunderstanding is over and Komonji goes his merry way. Ryuin's mastermind still remains at large. Who could it be? That's the question on his mind. He asks Sujun about Komonji's personality. Sujun, however, calls Ryuin's recent behaviors erratic and wonders how long he's willing to keep it going. Ryuin keeps his cool and tells them the game will soon end once he finds the mastermind behind Class D. Ayanokoji stands there silent and observes from behind the scenes. That night, Ryuin takes his two bodyguards outside and wonders why their plans to corner the mastermind aren't working. Ibuki asks him why he's so intent on having the mastermind cornered. Ryuin tells her he's just enjoying himself, nothing more and nothing less. Ryuin then decides to play the last card in his arsenal, a card so dangerous that if caught could lead to his expulsion. He begins this plan by calling in the bait to come meet him at a construction site. They get there first and paint out all the cameras there to avoid getting caught. With the night temperatures well near freezing point, Ryuin, Ibuki, Albert, and another guy wait for the bait to walk into their trap. Soon, Kat arrives at the building and meets up with Ryuin. She tries to speak her way out of the impending danger, but Ryuin was already set on torturing her till she gives him the name of the mastermind behind Class D's success. Ryuin asks Kei to reveal the name of the mastermind so he won't release her past to the world to see. Kei refuses to betray Ayanokoji and keeps quiet. Ryuin retraces his steps and leaves things to his goons. Ishizaki, the last guy with them, takes a bottle of cold water and pours it on her head to begin the torture process. Over the next few minutes, Ryuen and his people torture Kei to get the name of the criminal mastermind. At that moment, Ayanokoji gets out from the convenience store after buying some groceries. In the meantime, Ryuen keeps up with the torture. Still, Kei refuses to give him Ayanokoji's name. Ryuen gets impatient and picks Kei up to do horrible things to her. Ryuen continues torturing Kei, hoping she would slip up and reveal the name of the mastermind behind Class D. Still, Kei keeps her stance and refuses to give up Ayanokoji's name. Ryuen tells her the meeting with the bullies earlier on was a way of Ayanokoji to turn her into his pawn. While Ryuen is absolutely correct about his theory, Kei still refuses to give in to his claims. Ryuen holds her hair and stands her up to see why she's still protecting such a cruel master. In her mind, Kei thinks of herself as a cool person for holding out till the end. She still has a sliver of hope that Ayanokoji would come rescue her eventually. In the meantime, Ayanokoji refuses to join the other classmates on their outing. Instead, he calls for a meeting with Sei in an empty classroom to tell her about the incident happening currently. After hearing the horrible things Ryuen is doing to Kei at that moment, Sei still tries to strike a deal to get Ayanokoji to help elevate Class D. Ayanokoji takes a different route. Instead of asking her for help, Ayanokoji takes her to meet Manabe, the former president, so she witnesses their plan. Manabe agrees to testify that Class C started the fight should things go very wrong. In return, Ayanokoji would help Suzune get an official position in the student council board. After the deal is made, Ayanokoji takes his leave. Sei tries to call him back, but Manabe tells her Ayanokoji intends to end the war with Class C on his own. Ayanokoji gets to the building under construction and meets Albert at the entrance. He reveals his identity to Albert, who then lets him inside. On getting inside, Kei is surprised and relieved to see Ayanokoji keep his end of the deal. Ayanokoji finally reveals his true self as the mastermind behind the wondrous events that's been putting Class D in the spotlight. Ibuki cannot believe his claims, but Ayanokoji tells her about the special test on the island. Ryuen, after seeing the fear disappear from Kei's eyes, is convinced that Ayanokoji is the true mastermind of Class D. He looks at Ayanokoji with a smug look on his face and asks him how he intends to fight all four of them right there to free Kei. Ayanokoji tells him he can handle all four of them in one-on-one combat, so it shouldn't be a problem for him. Ayanokoji shows no fear and challenges Ryuen to come at him. Ishizaki goes first, Albert second, and then Ibuki third. Ayanokoji shocks Ryuen and displays adept fighting abilities. Mere minutes into the fight, he knocks down Albert and Ishizaki. Before continuing the fight, he tells Ryuen that them being there was all part of the plan to eliminate the Class C problem all along. Ibuki rushes at him and Ayanokoji knocks her down as well. Now it's all down to a 1 versus 1 between Ryuen and Ayanokoji. Ryuen, who has no special martial arts skill, uses his street fight technique to try and subdue Ayanokoji. However, Ayanokoji sees through his moves and pins him down in a few more moves. While fighting, Ryuen tells Ayanokoji that he's never felt afraid of anything or anyone in his entire life. Ayanokoji also replies to him, saying that he never for once felt afraid of him or anybody else in the entire school. He thinks logically and never does anything out of emotions. Ayanokoji, after pinning Ryuen down, restructures Ryuen's face and makes him feel that emotion he never thought he'd have in his entire life, fear. Ayanokoji knocks the mighty Ryuen down and walks over to Ayanokoji. He apologizes to Kei for coming later than expected. Then he asks her why she never released his name to Ryuen. Kei cries and tells him she doesn't even know. Ayanokoji holds her to himself and promises to never ever let her go ever again. The next day, Imuki gets to Ryuen's dorm room but doesn't find him there. She tried calling him but he didn't pick up the phone. She then runs around school searching for him, only to find him walking towards the school gate all bandaged up and calm. Ryuen for the first time apologizes for using Ibuki. He even gives her his points and steps down from the tyrant of Class C. Ibuki doesn't recognize this side of Ryuen, so she tries talking him back into becoming the leader of Class C. Ryuen, who seems to have made his resolve, tells Ibuki that he's caved in and won't be causing any trouble again. Ibuki gets annoyed and leaves him. Ayanokoji, who's been eavesdropping all along, decides to use Ryuen's new self to his advantage. Meanwhile, Kei sits in her bed thinking about Ayanokoji and the way the weakest boy in their class took down 4 adults to save her from trouble. When she finally realizes it, it's already too late. She's fallen in love with the psychopath we all know as Ayanokoji. Later on, she prepares herself and goes out with Sakura. There, Sakura tells her she plans on asking Ayanokoji out on a date on Christmas Day. She shows Kei her date plan and asks for a review. Kei reads through it and finds out Kei plans to ask Ayanokoji to be her boyfriend. She is very jealous and begins asking weird questions about the date. When she finds out the date would be on Christmas Day, she decides to go on a double date with Hirata just to spy on the both of them. That night, Kei spends her time wondering about Ayanokoji's plans for the date. While she wonders, she sees Ayanokoji's call. Upon picking it up, Ayanokoji talks to her and asks her to find some information on Sakura. When she's done, she's to mail her findings to him. He hangs up the call immediately and leaves Kei to sleepless nights. Ayanokoji meets up with Suzune that night to talk about her placement in the student council. He tells her that her elder brother had made a deal with her to get her into the student council. Suzune refuses to believe Ayanokoji, but then Ayanokoji calls her brother and gives her the phone. After talking to her brother, Suzune finds out Ayanokoji was telling the truth after all. Ayanokoji takes his leave and wishes her a good day. Up next, Ayanokoji calls Ryuin to meet him somewhere secluded. When he arrives, Ayanokoji commends Ryuin for holding up against him until the end. Ryuin pledges his allegiance to Ayanokoji and asks what his next move will be. Ayanokoji tells him he plans to weed out the person sabotaging Class D. He promises to expel Koshia as soon as possible. The next day, Sakura meets up with Ayanokoji. Kei and Hirata join them later, and they kickstart the date. They hit the cinema to watch a few movies before going to the restaurant later on. As they sip their cup of tea, Kei keeps her eyes peeled looking for signs of Ayanokoji liking Sakura. By evening time, the date ends. Sakura walks Ayanokoji to a secluded walkway and asks him to be her boyfriend. Ayanokoji apologizes and politely rejects her. Sakura tears up and rushes back to her dorm room crying. When she's gone, Kei reveals herself from hiding. A few hours later, Kei asks Ayanokoji why he rejected Sakura. Ayanokoji tells her Sakura can't be a good substitute for her. Kei smiles and gives Ayanokoji a present. He collects it and gives her cold medicine as his own present. She takes what she gets and thanks him for the help. Ayanokoji walks Kei home and notices her smiling throughout the entire trip. In his mind, Ayanokoji feels no affection for her. Everything is just going according to his plan. Now that Kei thinks he's in love with her, she'll be much more inclined to do things willingly for him and be his pawn in the long run. Now, if that isn't psychopathic, I don't know what is.